Hello, my name is Chelsea Lyons. I am a two-time black belt world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I hold two belt titles for Fight to Win, and I've placed top 3 in the world at every belt level, including a world champion at blue belt.
My name is Katie, and I am a mixed martial artist. Uh, I have been a blue belt world medalist. I've done a lot of things. I mean, for me, accomplishments like going to Thailand, creating multiple businesses since I was 16.
Hi, my name's Elena. I've been training MMA since 2019. I currently train under my head coach, Jessica Miramontes, and my jiu-jitsu coach is Chelsea Lyons.
My name is Jessica Miramontes. I'm currently the head coach of Unaffiliated Athletics. My martial arts are all of them. I've competed in almost everything, boxing, MMA, jiu-jitsu, Kukso Wan, karate, you name it. I've done it since I was 8 years old. I am a 7th place world ranked fighter in the world at 125 pounds in Sanda. I was a 3-time national champion for Sanda. I qualified for the Beijing 2008 Olympics. And I was an undefeated MMA fighter, 3-0 at the time. Oh, and then I won a bronze medal at the Pan American Games. Forgot about that one.
When I first started training, there wasn't really anything that kept me specifically because I was a woman. Because I was a foreigner at the time, there were only specific gyms we were allowed to go to. There were only certain times, like we could only train on Saturday afternoons. We got every other weekend with the gym. It limited the people who could train with us because of gym politics in Korea. But at the time, it was mostly being a foreigner as opposed to being a female.
The obstacles that challenged me when I first began were the fact that what I was doing didn't really exist for women. I kind of was making it up as I went along. There weren't really too many role models. There wasn't really a path. It was just I enjoyed doing this and I just wanted to do it all the time. So how do I make that happen? I had never really met any other female fighters. I had seen them on the internet, but that was about it.
The only opposition that I truly found as a female in the beginning is that you weren't taken seriously. A lot of times, they would train with you, but the guys would either not go hard or go way too hard, which I kind of thrived on, so I'm okay with that. So anytime you would tell them hey, I'm ready to fight or I want to compete, you would only have maybe 1 to 2 people that would support you. But when it comes to this in the beginning, that's all you need. The other problem or the other opposition I would face is actually finding female competitors to go against. So a lot of the time, for me, it was no problem, but some people would see that as an opposition you face. Is I had to fight against the guys more often than not.
I have been fortunate enough that when I first started, I didn't really have a lot of the obstacles that my other female friends have had. I've been lucky enough not to have too many of that. As we went further along my journey, I have had some obstacles. Going back to kind of what I said earlier, this is really going to show my age. When I first started, social media wasn't what it is today. So in order for us to learn anything, we had to ask questions or wait for the answer to be given to us. So a lot of the things that I had to learn the hard way. Again, I've been fortunate enough that a lot of my female friends, they had a really bumpy road. They started before me. And so I started shortly after them. So mine wasn't as traumatic as theirs. I mean, there have been some instances when I do go with guys, when I first started, how they would rough me up. But then they opened up that door and I was like, okay, bet. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to handle myself to get justice, I guess is the word I'm going to say. But other than that, I'm a kind of person, I guess I walk around and you don't fuck with that girl kind of thing.
I have definitely had training partners treat me differently, especially guys who are very early on in their fighting journey. people who come on their first day feel like they can't hit a girl, so they just won't throw punches properly or won't throw real kicks, or they'll apologize for like landing a very weak little tap punch. So it makes it difficult to train with those people if they don't take you seriously as an opponent.
When I first began, I trained with a lot of grown men. They at first minimized me, and then over time, I proved that I was just a mean human. And they began to realize like they better take me seriously or I'm going to hurt them. I distinctly remember breaking a man's nose when I was grappling, just because he wasn't taking me seriously and he was trying to like tease me and taunt me, and I punched him in the face and broke his nose. Didn't really make fun of me after that. I had to fight a lot to get what I wanted, the respect that I wanted. Yeah.
I believe that misogyny not only exists in the world of martial arts, it exists in the world. So if it's going to exist in the world, it's definitely going to exist in a world where it's been dominantly male. You know, it's been for men. I mean, dating back how long? When people consider fighting, they think of men. So there's definitely misogyny in martial arts, but I also believe that the amount of that you're going to face depends on where you choose to continue to place yourself while training. And I think all females, not all females, I think a good number of the females who enter martial arts may have to go through that in order to find their place.
Yes, 100%.
I do believe misogyny exists in the MMA world. I think it's interesting. It ebbs and flows. When I first started, it was more of like a circus act. It wasn't necessarily like a big thing. And because I was attractive, I kind of got away with more. It's far more accepted now. However, there is a massive pay discrepancy, I've noticed, which is an issue. Also, the way people view women's MMA is not necessarily in the same echelon of men, which is unfortunate, in my opinion.
Yes, I definitely believe that misogyny exists in the MMA world. I think it's hard to avoid. It exists in the world, so it's going to exist in fighting. Especially fighting, it's something that's been traditionally men, I think up until like 2010, Dana White was saying that he would never have women in the UFC. We've only been in the UFC for like 10 years now, so it's a fairly new development. So yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot of growing to do. I feel like women's MMA is kind of in its first generation of fighters, moving into the second generation. So I think that men's fighting has come a lot farther just because it's had more time.
The inequalities, I believe, exist. Yes, it's interesting. It doesn't appear in MMA as much as it does in sports like boxing. In boxing, professional women fight 2-minute rounds, 1-minute rest, as opposed to their male counterparts who fight 3-minute rounds, 1-minute rest. And so, but in MMA, it was this way in MMA initially, but they changed it to make it equal. So now women fight 5-minute rounds just like the men, but it wasn't always this way. The other inequalities I really would focus on is, I would say there's a massive pay inequality. You don't see a lot of female fighters making the same amount of money as men, which is unfortunate. When I first started, I actually made more than most men did, but I think that had to do more with my looks rather than my ability.
I really don't want to say something and rat out my friends, but you know, a lot of guys think that women should be in the kitchen and shouldn't be fighting because it's not interesting. I disagree. I think anytime you see women fight, it's the most ferocious thing you've ever seen. It's like letting two cats out of a bag and go at it, you know, just wanting to kill each other. And I think it's great.
I definitely think there are inequalities that female martial artists face today, and fighters as well. The inequalities being pay, obviously, but that's such a worldwide thing. Like, this is just not in fighting, but I'm seeing it continue to shift and change. And me personally, I like to look at the positive aspects and be aware of the others. I think one is there's still a good number of people who won't even pay to go see females fight. But I also know like the further that we go year after year, the more time that martial arts has under its belt as a whole, the more that that line starts to fade between men and women, both in the excitement of seeing them fight, as well as the excitement of, I'll put my money down on this because it's going to be really good to watch. And I may be partial, but sometimes because we have to fight harder and we have to fight for more just to be seen and heard, sometimes those female fights are more exciting.
I'm sure that there are inequalities that female fighters face. I know some of the best fighters, like Valentina and Amanda Nunes, are probably getting paid normal amounts, great money. But for the other female fighters, I don't think that they're doing as well. Um, I think that like you have high paid fighters and low paid female fighters, where with men's you might have some people who are making an average income in the middle. You can be a good fighter and still survive, but to be a female fighter, you have to be one of the best.
I never experienced discrimination as a female fighter because of my looks at the time. I was really pretty. I was I was well spoken. I was kind of arrogant and fun. People enjoyed that. But as a coach, most definitely, as a coach, I noticed that like I've actually had the word said, "You'll make a great lady coach one day," said to me. Um, a lot of times people will treat me like I'm the cleaning lady when they see me vacuuming the floor or something like that. Not that like I'm actually running the program. They're oftentimes trying to defer to a man, asking where the man is to explain the things to them. I've experienced a lot of discrimination as a coach, not necessarily as a fighter.
I haven't really had a chance to get out there. You could kind of say that's discrimination just because there's no one else to go against. So obviously, if there's discrimination, everyone else in my weight division has already fallen victim to it and dropped out. I will not be so easily swayed.
Again, I've been fortunate enough that people at least don't say it publicly to me. They don't hate me as they do a lot of my friends. I don't know how else to say that. I don't I don't know, honestly. I don't pay attention to them, I guess.
I definitely have dealt with discrimination, more so in the beginning. I think that, I believe that I've come to a place where I've really worked hard to make a name for myself, and sometimes not even realizing that's what I was doing, just being in love with martial arts and pouring myself into it. So definitely in the beginning, a lot of discrimination in the sense that you're going to encounter different types of martial artists, different types of coaches, different types of gym owners, just as a person or a practitioner, and definitely as a female. So I dealt with a lot of that more so in the beginning, and would end up shifting to multiple gyms, not too many, just 2 or 3 times, trying to find my own space. And I don't even know that I was aware of it in the beginning. I would encounter some situations that wouldn't even start to ring a bell within me of what was truly happening until weeks after it had happened. And then I believe I really started to understand it when I walked into Marcelo Garcia Dallas and finally understood what it was like to not be experiencing that, to be experiencing a healthy environment, or an environment that really supports females as well.
I have had promoters reach out just after seeing me and ask for me to come fight for them with no knowledge of what experience or what skills that I have. So that is clearly just from them looking at me and seeing, oh, she would look good on a poster, so we're going to ask her to come fight for us.
Unfortunately, yes. A lot of the times had a lot of my interactions with fans and promoters, they tended to only be really interested in the way that I looked. I remember I was being asked to do a Bud Light ad in a bikini. I'd be posing with the belt, as if I was a ring girl carrying the championship belt for this promotion. So yeah.
Going back to what I'm saying, I have the reverse effect compared to a lot of my friends, and I am ashamed to say that yes, a lot of promoters like me because of the way I look, and I feel guilty, but at the same time, that's my blessing, and I am aware of that. And like I said, I have such a high bar that everyone sees me at, and that is my goal for this year, to make sure that I am exactly who everyone thinks I am.
I would love to say yes because I honestly I don't know. I don't know because it's never been presented to me like that. But I do know that promoters have used myself and maybe the competitor I'm going against as their main card. And the feedback that they received from that, I don't know if it's looks or abilities, but why choose? And not in an egotistical way, just in a like, aren't we all beautiful in some way to somebody, right? So why do we even have to decide like these 40 people say we don't look good and these 40 people say we look good, so put them in tight gearing, like get them out there to perform, right? I think just, I think I haven't really experienced that. And if I had, I didn't know because I was just so excited that they were putting us out there that I didn't pay attention to it. I've definitely never been on the negative side of that. Like nobody has ever told me like, oh, you don't fit what we're looking for. Or, oh, we want to put this person instead because they have more followers, more viewers. Like I personally have not experienced that, but I'm sure some of the women have. But hopefully like the further it continues to go, they never have to experience that. Everybody just wants to see a good fight, really.
I personally have not ever been assaulted. However, I have been manipulated or I've been coerced into trying to do things but I was able and smart enough and strong enough to shut that shit down immediately. I have had coaches who've wanted to sleep with me multiple times, who basically threatened and gave me ultimatums on my career. I've had promoters that wanted me to wear more suggestive clothing. I've had a lot of things that shouldn't have happened. But I know of people, and I have heard of other incidents with other people, and it still goes on today, of coaches committing assaults, training partners committing assaults. It is rampant. MMA is filled with a lot of different types of wounded and hurt people, and what has happened is that you are arming people with the ability to hurt others and not creating a system of accountability to keep these people, accountable for their actions and responsible.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have been assaulted by training partners, coaches. They're like we talked about earlier. There aren't a lot of females who train mixed martial arts, or even those who want to fight. And those who want to fight need even more training to make sure that when they go into a ring, into a cage, that they are capable of hurting the other person before the other person hurts them. And when you do that training, you need a lot of one-on-one time with a lot of people, and sometimes things happen that shouldn't.
I've never experienced any type of assault or misbehavior from a coach or anyone who was in a position of power over me. I'm very fortunate for that. I did originally train at a different gym than I am currently at. It wasn't even bad, but it was not as safe as the gym that I'm currently at. Because of why I started training, I was not always comfortable in jiu-jitsu rolling with strange dudes that I didn't know. I have had a couple encounters with other training partners where maybe you could feel them getting not being comfortable with jiu-jitsu. There are positions in jiu-jitsu where it can be sexual or it could look sexual, but we're trying to fight each other, so we're not gonna make it that way. But if some dude like pauses while you have him in guard and just kind of like looks down at you, then you can kind of tell what they're thinking about, and they're not always focused on the jiu-jitsu. So it's happened from people my equal who I was able to then avoid. I haven't had a whole gym or a coach put me in an awkward position.
I have, and it mostly pisses me off to acknowledge that it was an assault with all of the skills that I now hold. The first MMA gym that I walked into, within less than a month, like I was training for a fight, they'd found a girl that I could fight against. So there were 2 rooms set up, a main training room, and then in the connected room we had an octagon to practice in. And the owner he would bring us in there one at a time out of class to get some rounds in, especially if we're preparing for a fight as well, because he was. And he pulled me in there one evening while I was training, and there was nobody in there. And he started working different like ground and pound positions with me. And he got me into a full mount, which I was still learning like how to full mount escape, and still learning like, wait, what do they call this? A full mount escape? And he held me down in a position, and he's like, hey, what do you do if this happens? And I was like, oh, I don't know. You know, I was so young and like fresh in this and like excited. So I'm really thinking this guy is trying to help me, right? Because I've already showed up with a little bit of trauma, and I'm like, this person's gonna help me get past that. But instead, he fed on that. And so he was asking me like, what do you do this? I'm like, oh, maybe bring my arm in or turn to my side. And then it went further, and then he started like, oh, what do you do if I do this? And all of a sudden he started like kissing my ear, kissing my neck, and started grabbing me a little tighter. And I tried to move, and I realized like I couldn't move. I've never experienced that. I grew up, like we had street fights, like all that, I guess. I had never fully experienced somebody who actually was a practice fighter, put me in a position where I couldn't move. So in that moment, luckily I'm very loud. So I used my voice, and the people in the other room, like it kind of got quiet. So I think he realized, and he's like, oh, you need to calm down. I was like, you need to calm the fuck down. Sorry. But I just let him know. I'm like, you need to get the fuck up off me, because at least I still had my voice.
I do believe that MMA has had a positive shift towards equality. Is it perfect? By no means is it perfect, but it has changed drastically. The one thing I will say is that I don't like how men and women, there's a pay discrepancy. If you look at, I don't think it's so much in the UFC as much as it is in boxing, because in the UFC there's a pay scale kind of situation where they basically base it off of how long you've been active. But there's definitely less earning power for a woman in the sport still. Boxing, it is so bad. It is so prevalent, and it is horrendous.
You know, I'm going to say women's MMA is starting to get to be closer to being equal. I think pioneers like Gina Carano, oddly enough, Cyborg, and then obviously Ronda Rousey pushed it further and further into the spotlight. And now you've got women fighting co-main events, main events, and that's awesome for me, because I feel opportunity for me.
I definitely think that women's MMA is improving. It went from not existing in the UFC to 10 years later. We actually have 4 women's divisions. There's more female fighters now than there ever have been. I think that we're in the early stages of women's MMA. For men's MMA, we might be on like the 3rd or 4th generation of fighter. And I think the women's is about to see the next evolution, the next phase of female fighters. And I think that's going to bring in a lot more fans. It's going to be a lot more exciting fights. I think you're going to start to see some real athletes in the female divisions.
I do. I definitely do. Women's MMA, women's martial arts, just in general has made a huge shift. I mean, and honestly, it's not even accounted for yet just how far it's going, but thank you. We appreciate you making an account of it. Because it has, like I said, there were 3 women in 3 years in my experience that came and went. Now I have maybe 40% females in a class on a day. Some days we have more females than men, which means there are that many females preparing. You get a percentage of that will go into fighting, that will go into competing. So I definitely think there's a huge shift for females in martial arts, for the acceptance of female in martial arts. And I don't even think it's becoming an acceptance of it. I think it's just what it is now. Like, we are here, right? Hear us roar. So I just really believe that it's made a huge shift. It's going to continue to shift. And at some point, as we continue to move forward, and especially with different generations now taking over martial arts, that's no longer going to be a topic, because it had to be a topic right now in order to make that shift.
I am very fortunate in the position that I'm in right now. When I started training, I never expected to find so many other great women to train with. Both of my coaches right now are women, and I think that's fairly uncommon. I have a great MMA coach, Jessica Miramontes, who's a woman. I have a great jiu-jitsu coach, Chelsea Lyons, who's a woman. I have great other women to look up to who I train with. And I think it's really great to see the guys that I train with see our coach and really respect her. It doesn't matter to us that she's a woman. She has knowledgeable and valuable things to say. We all respect that and listen to it. We have, however, seen other people treat her not great because of her being a woman. And I think all of that just makes all of us want to work harder and prove that our coach being a woman doesn't make us any less of fighters, doesn't make her any less of a coach, and that we'll all succeed and do great things because of her.